But there's been a horrible regression. Okay, my generation of the baby boomers, born just after World War II, had, I think, a greater sense of historical reality because of the traumas our parents had experienced in the Depression of the 1930s, followed by all the young men going to war. My father was was in the Pacific Theater, was a paratrooper. All of my uncles had fought in World War II, the Battle of the Bulge, and so on. All of the helmets and things, the equipment brought back from war were in a giant box on my paternal grandmother's back porch. So there was a sense, okay, of tremendous realism about history, about suffering, disaster, loss, the Holocaust, the threat of nuclear warfare with this in the standoff with the Soviet Union, and so the 1950s I experienced growing up is very repressive. I didn't understand why. It was only much later that I concluded that our parents' generation had experienced so much so much anxiety and pressure throughout their lives. They wanted a better life for their children, so we were overprotected. And I was in absolute open revolt against the code of a kind of simpering femininity that was being forced on us in the 1950s. The movies of that period, okay, there was a kind of a chipper, chirpy blondness, okay, an aggressive imperialism of the blondes, of Debbie Reynolds, of Doris Day.
Doris
okay?
Day.
Yes, I just okay. In the introduction to my new book, I described the horrors, okay, of being at Girl Scout camp and fleeing into the woods, okay, to avoid the mass singing of Doris Day's "Que Sera, Sera," okay, by everyone else, okay. So I was signaling my dissent, okay, from this oppressive insistence upon the feminine persona in my transgender Halloween costumes that I started doing early on. It's amazing that my parents, allowed me to do it, but it's obvious I wouldn't dress as a woman. So I was Robin Hood, followed by the Toreador from Carmen. I was Napoleon. It was like one of my. I was like 8, okay, and I was Napoleon. A Roman soldier, okay. Like in the church, for example, Christianity never made a dent on me. I was always drawn to the pagan residue in Christianity. So the Stations of the Cross is where actually I saw the Roman soldiers. So, the whole thing about Jesus' suffering and carrying the cross and stumbling made no pressure whatever. It was the Roman soldiers. I thought a tremendous fashion statement, okay, with their greaves and their breastplates and their. So I was a Roman soldier, like whatever my age 7 Halloween costume and so on. And then eventually I was Hamlet. Okay. And this was there were no other girls who were dressing in men's clothing at Halloween at that period. But I just felt I was absolutely suffocating. I belonged to to this generation of rebellion. I finally felt at home in with the kind of gender bending fad that came out of London, swinging 60s, London, Mad London, and there's a tremendous energy that came from London. I felt it was a kind of my spiritual home through that period. There were now all kinds of clothing one could buy that was in effect transgender. I had like flared trousers, pinstriped, okay, wearing like Carnaby Street men's ties and so on. Finally, I felt I was coming into my own at that period in the 1960s. So when feminism was reborn with Betty Friedan in the late 1960s, I thought this was supposed to be about the liberation of women. Instead, I really hit a wall of the closed minds, the kind of the new fanatics, okay, of second wave feminism. I had already signaled my revolt by my passion for Amelia Earhart, okay, when I was in high school in the early 1960s. Through Amelia Earhart, who I learned about through some newspaper article, they found some bones, which turned out not to be hers after all, the eternal mystery of what happened to Amelia Earhart. But through my 3-year research project into Amelia Earhart in the early 1960s, I learned about that wonderful period following the women gaining the right to vote in both Britain and the United States. And these women like Katharine Hepburn, Dorothy Parker, Dorothy Thompson, Margaret Burke White. There were like just so many, and Anne Morrow Lindbergh. There were so many women who were achieving and who attained a tremendous celebrity in the period of the 1920s, 1930s. That to me is my favorite period in feminism, okay? Because these women, okay, admired what men had done. Okay? There was no male bashing, as became systemic, okay, to second wave feminism. Okay? It's an absolute poison that has spread worldwide. Okay, a feminism based on denigrating men, trivializing what men have done, defining men as oppressors and tyrants through history. Okay, it is an absolute lie. I mean, there have been crimes against women. Where they have occurred, we must condemn them. Right, but men throughout history have given their lives, okay, and their labor for the support of women and children. Okay, so this is an element in second wave feminism that to me is an extrapolation of neuroticism on the part of these fanatics, okay, who have been attracted to this movement. Okay? And I've been at war. Or Amelia Earhart admired what Lindbergh had done, and she was called the Lady Lindbergh, okay, when she crossed the Atlantic, heroically alone, okay, in an airplane. She couldn't even see it out the windshield. She was like doing everything, by mechanically, etc. Right. So I feel that was the most helpful period in terms of the history of feminism.